I hope you folks have got the letter, the signing letter that accompanied Senate Bill 54. Does everybody have one of these? And then the statement of the police chiefs, Ed Medrano, saying that this act was very compatible with good law enforcement. Oh, I just want to make sure you have those because what we're talking about today, you ready? This is really unprecedented for the chief law enforcement of the United States to come out to California and act more like Fox News than a law enforcement officer. This is a political stunt. It's more like Fox News and what's going on in Washington. And it's not about the truth. It's not about protecting our state. It's about dividing America. There's been a lot of concern about people, foreign people, who sow division and discord. Now we have the Attorney General doing precisely that. This is a time to build bridges, not walls, to pull Americans together, not set us apart. And like so many in the Trump administration, this Attorney General has no regard for the truth. What he said earlier today is not true. It is a lie. But what can I say? We've seen in the Trump administration, with the investigations going on, the pleas of guilty to lying by countless individuals, colleagues. So there it is. Now, I want to just say that we're going to carry on. We want to protect our citizens from criminals. We want to protect people from improper abuse of the law. That's what it's about here. And there are some difficulties with the kind of problems we have in America with immigration, but we ought to work together. And this Attorney General maybe he's trying to keep his job because the President is not too happy with him. But we here are going to stick to the facts. We're going to stick to the law, and certainly we'll meet this litigation fully. And the Attorney General will explain that. We're very interested in uncovering what the Attorney General has been doing, what immigration is doing, because we want transparency, we want integrity, and we want to protect the people of California. And when it comes to these different laws, there is no doubt that the police can do their job. Now, the federal government ought to do its job and not blame California for its own inability to solve the problem, whether it's of crime or whether it's of immigration. That's the job for this Attorney General, and he shouldn't come out to a political show to try to engage in these tactics as opposed to being above the fray, being the Attorney General for all of us and working together. And despite what he's done, I still put my hand out and say, I'll cooperate, Jeff, if you can get off this current maneuver you're on, because it's unbecoming, it's based on non-truth, and I hope you'll shape up before it's too late. And I'll tell you, this lawsuit, they're talking about going to the Supreme Court. This lawsuit is going to last a lot longer than the Trump administration.
Usually as an attorney, you advise your client not to say anything in public, but I think in this case, I'm really pleased that my client, the governor, has made it very clear where the state of California stands. And I think you can trace all of this back to the fact that Washington, D.C., as the governor just mentioned, the Trump administration, has just failed utterly to help us fix a very broken immigration system. And this is what it comes down to, these types of actions that take us nowhere in advancing both good immigration policy and protecting states and the people in our states to make sure that we're doing the job of public safety and advancing the general welfare of all of our people in the United States of America. I want to thank the governor for his words. I want to thank him for his actions. It was his signature on these measures that are giving Californians the type of protection they need to be able to do everything that's made us the 6th largest economy in the world today. Here in California, we respect the law and the Constitution. We expect the federal government to do the same. As I've said many times, our state laws work in concert with federal laws. And our state law enforcement officials work in concert with federal law enforcement officials every day. That's not something we intend to change. Our federal and state teams are working together, indeed today, to go after drug dealers, to combat sex traffickers, to take down gang violence, and we have no intention of changing that public safety work. Our teams have had a chance within the California Department of Justice to look at the lawsuit that Attorney General Sessions filed against us late last night, and today I want to offer a few initial responses to some of AG Sessions' claims. The lawsuit challenges some of our state laws, which are, again, fully constitutional and provide for the safety and welfare of all of our people. The Trump administration says that AB 450, a law that protects Californians' privacy at the workplace, prevents ICE from carrying out its investigations at work sites. That's not true. AB 450 clearly allows employers to cooperate with ICE. It simply requires that before immigration enforcement agents enter certain areas of the workplace or access employee records, they first present employers with documents that ensure employers and employees their rights and their privacy, and that those are being respected. The Trump administration says that AB 103, which requires my office to review detention facilities where non-citizens are held, prevents the federal government from doing its job. That's not true. Our residents and our public officials have a right to know the conditions under which people are detained in these facilities. Those conditions include whether they are being treated properly, whether they have access to necessary medical care, whether they have access to an attorney, if they have an attorney, and whether or not they are being afforded due process. All people deserve humane treatment, and they deserve due process under the laws and Constitution of the United States. Finally, the Trump administration says that SB 54, the Values Act, violates federal law. That's not true either. The 10th Amendment provides California with the right to decline to participate in civil immigration enforcement. In adopting SB 54, the Values Act, California has exercised its rights to define the circumstances where state and local law enforcement may participate in immigration enforcement. And once again, California is in the business of public safety. We're not in the business of deportations. I believe it's a low blow. I believe it's a low blow for the Trump administration to deny our men and women who wear the badge the funding they need to keep us all safe by coercing us to try to do what they want us to do. That is not a good public safety technique, to try to coerce us to do what they want us to do. In California, we don't confuse coercion with cooperation. Neither should the Trump administration. I look forward to making these arguments in court, and we will continue to stand up for our police and our sheriffs, whose funding has been threatened by the Trump administration, and for the policies that we've enacted to increase trust in our communities and that our officers and sheriffs are sworn to protect. We intend to make sure public safety is job one for law enforcement in California. We respect the federal government's right to take on immigration enforcement. With that, we'll take any questions.
Direct them to either one of them.
I was going to start with him, actually. Todd Thompson, I think. There were some filings with this where they laid out how they think this has interfered with their ability and endangered their officers, that kind of thing. Can you respond to that and some of the sort of the practical applications here that they're alleging?
We, as I said, work day to day, day in, day out with federal enforcement officials, not just ICE, not just CPB, But with FBI, DEA, you name it, we work with them every day. We're working hand in hand. If we're putting them in jeopardy, we would be putting our law enforcement agents and officers in jeopardy.
What's the example of an officer being put in jeopardy? Don, do you have that?
Yeah,
So you don't
they
have
can't.
an example, so how, I can't respond to a non,
Well, he gave the example that California would have someone in custody, and they would let the person out, and then the ICE officers would have to go to the person's home and knock on a door and wouldn't know what was on the other
well,
side of the door.
that's not true. Look, we know the Trump administration is full of liars. They've pled guilty already to the special counsel. Under the laws of California, nothing stops the federal government from coming to a jail. The release records are public. There's nothing that stops a sheriff who runs the jails to working with ICE. There's nothing in the law that prevents ICE from working in our prisons and working with our Department of Corrections. Beyond that, the most serious crimes are exempted. So in many ways, there are many layers of protection. And what Jeff Sessions said is simply not true. And I call upon him to apologize to the people of California, to bringing the mendacity of Washington to California and trying to insert discord and division, and I might add dysfunctionality, in a state that's really working. So let's build some bridges, not walls.
Governor, how do you respond to what he said about Oakland's mayor, Libby Schaaf, and her decision to...
Well, I didn't hear Libby Schaaf, and I'm not going to comment on that.
Oh,
I
no.
will comment on anything I said.
What Sessions said today, he said that she was, again, putting people's lives in jeopardy, and
Well,
he
I
said how...
think you should take that up with Libby Schaaf. I will account for whatever I say. I'm sure the Attorney General will account for what he says. But what each local mayor does or doesn't do, that's a matter of interest that people should follow up on. But I did not, other than something in the news, so I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to comment.
Governor, you suggested that the relationship between the Attorney General and the President is influencing his decision here. You really think this is the Attorney General trying to get in the good graces of the President?
Look, this is completely unprecedented for the chief law enforcement of the United States to come out here and engage in a political stunt, make wild accusations, many of which are based on outright lies. That's unusual, and particularly a fellow coming from Alabama talking to us about secession and protecting the human and civil rights. I do think this is pure red meat for the base, and I would assume, but this is pure speculation, that Jeff thinks that Donald will be happier with him, and I'm sure Donald will be tweeting his joy at this particular performance. But it's not about law enforcement, it's not about justice, and it really demeans the high office to which he has been appointed.
Governor? Governor, if I could follow up on the question on Libby Schaaf, but you yourself are a former mayor of Oakland.
I sure am, and I'll tell you, anything
so-
I said, I'll be glad to comment on it.
So would you, as mayor, have done
No,
the
that's a
same?
would you, want to be, could it be. No, I'm here as governor. I'm not making any statements to issue regarding impending actions by the federal government. I'm speaking now about the Attorney General. Those are my comments.
Will you, Mr. Pissarro, will you be able to do any discovery on this case? And the governor made a reference to the sort of information that might be available, or that you might be able to get.
They've opened themselves up to that. If they want to file a lawsuit, then we have the right to discover the basis for their lawsuit. So we'll go at it.
So what sorts of information might you be able to elicit?
Stay tuned.
Señor Becerra, algunas palabras en español, por favor.
Can we get into the discussions at the White House, or would those be executive privilege?
Can you speak to the arguments in their case about the supremacy clause and just elaborate on that a little bit?
I think I did in my opening comments. We believe that the 10th Amendment gives the states the rights, its rights to decide how to enforce public safety, to provide for the general welfare. And if Jeff Sessions can point out to me where in the Constitution it says that that's the federal government's prerogative to do that for the states, then we'll listen. But until he can find that provision in the Constitution, the 10th Amendment still prevails.
Mr. Becerra, could you say a few words in Spanish, if you don't mind? Just a few.
Governor?
No, I'm not going to say that. But I want to say, look, these are, like all laws, there's lots of terms. There can be more than one interpretation. But what Americans have done traditionally, an attorney general would talk to our attorney general. They would work things out. This is basically going to war against the state of California, the engine of the American economy. It's not wise, it's not right, and it will not stand.
Say a couple of quick words in Spanish. Estamos aquí, como dice el gobernador, para no solo defender el Estado, pero el pueblo de California, porque sabemos bien que la Constitución protege las acciones, los derechos que tiene un Estado para proteger su pueblo. El gobernador, el presidente Trump, ni el fiscal general Jeff Sessions tiene el derecho de decirle a California cómo va a proteger a su pueblo. Tienen derecho de ejercer todo el poder en cuanto sea inmigración, pero en el asunto de la seguridad del pueblo, eso es algo que la Constitución deja al Estado de California y los oficiales de California.
¿Qué es lo que van a hacer ustedes para contrarrestar o responder ante esto, señor Becerra?
Estamos listos a hacer lo que hemos hecho en el pasado, y eso es defender nuestros derechos, y hemos ganado en casi cada caso, así que es lo que vamos a hacer.
Governor, what do you say to families out there who, despite this back and forth between the state and the federal government, the ICE agents are still coming, and this might even amp up their actions? What do you tell people who are probably pretty scared right now?
Well, people are scared, and ICE is not only coming, but they've been here for a long time, and they're stepping it up. So we have the protections that we believe are balanced, that are consistent with state law, and which recognize federal supremacy. More than that, I don't think I want to comment.
Governor, if there's misunderstanding about California law, is it because of the terminology that's often used, calling this a sanctuary state, talking about sanctuary cities that give the idea you get here, you're safe no matter what?
Well, that's not true. There's nothing, the word sanctuary does not appear in these laws. I have never uttered that word in my presentations. This is a carefully balanced measure as recognized by the head of the California Police Chiefs. So a lot of this stuff is pure campaigning. Let's face it, the Trump White House is under siege. Mueller is closing in. There are more indictments to come. So obviously the Attorney General has found it hard just to be a normal Attorney General. He's been caught up in the whirlwind of Trumpism.
Not me, the other.
So that's all. Yes.
Are you guys confident that with that these laws really comply with federal immigration enforcement, especially when you guys think of like Arizona State Bill 1070 and the issues around
Can you say that? You say, am I confident of what?
Are you insistent that the laws comply with federal immigration enforcement, especially when you take into account Arizona State?
I can't. I'm sorry. You got it. I'm not getting the full drift.
Are you guys sure that these laws comply with federal immigration enforcement laws, and especially
Apply to them? No, these apply to the people of California, and they're consistent with federal law. What are you saying?
do they comply?
Yes, they comply. That's where we comply. But of course, like every lawsuit, there are different interpretations. But we've acted in good faith. The drafters of these laws are very conscientious, and we think we've drawn the proper line between what the state has competency to do and what is the overriding federal supremacy. And that's what we've done. And we're acting in good faith. Now, because of this circus that Jeff Sessions brought to Sacramento, we're engaging in this kind of dialogue. But I would hope when Sessions gets back on the plane and his deputies take over, we can have a rational discussion between lawyers and iron out this balance, this relationship between the federal government and the state government.
Can I just add a clarification here? Arizona was trying to enact immigration laws. That's a federal prerogative. We're not trying to enact immigration laws. We're enacting public safety laws. And the Trump administration doesn't like that. But we're not trying to get into their business. They're trying to get into our business.
How can you interpret, for AB 405, how can you interpret any other way listing, putting up on a bulletin board when ICE will come? How can you interpret that any other way than warning people that the authorities are
Read me
coming?
this place in the statute where it says we can tell ICE when they can come.
Well, isn't part of the statute that the employer must give notification that ICE will be coming?
We asked employers to give notification of activities. That doesn't stop ICE from doing what it has to do. How does that stop ICE from enforcing immigration law?
Isn't it the equivalent of the mayor of Oakland saying, be warned, the federal authorities are coming?
Okay, show me where AB 450 is telling ICE what it must do.
I think, are you referring to the, have you heard of the right to counsel? Under the federal constitution, people have a right to be told they have a right to a lawyer. And under one of our rules, when the ICE comes by, the inmates are given information about their rights under the federal and state constitution. We're not trying to interfere. We're not saying, look out, the feds are coming. We're just following the law, and the law allows people to be advised of their rights under the law. And I think that's perfectly appropriate. Anything else smacks of a more totalitarian approach to things.
Governor, regarding another California law that's being challenged, there's the Reproductive Fact Act, a bill you signed in 2015, is going to be heard in the Supreme Court this month. It requires certain signage be posted in anti-abortion clinics, and the Christian groups that feel it's an infringement on their free speech. Why is this law so important to California that it's worth defending all the way to the very highest court of the land?
Well, the normal procedure is when a law is attacked to defend it, both to defend the law and to get clarification at the most appropriate level, which in this case will be the Supreme Court. And there were charges of misrepresentation, and this was an attempt to create truthful information and make it available. That's all. And the High Court will tell us what the rules are, and I'm good with that.
Everyone's entitled to accurate information about their health care. And that's simply what the FACT Act says, is you're entitled to know what you have a right to and when it comes to your health care. And so there's nothing coercive, there's nothing intrusive in the requirements of the law that infringe upon someone's First Amendment rights. It's about making sure women have accurate information about their health care.
Governor Brown, you just want some clarification from me. I'm up
Where are you?
right over here. This way.
You're really in the bush.
I'm
You're in the forest. The forest of cameras.
You called this an act of war from the federal government.
An act of war?
And you said that
that's pretty strong. But I reincorporate that comment, yes.
Okay, so does that mean that California is going to retaliate to what the federal government had?
No, we are a state of laws, and we want to observe the law, and now the Attorney General has basically thrown the gauntlet down and done it in a highly politicized way. This has never happened before, to my knowledge, in the history of California. So the Attorney General's coming out here, he gives a speech, 10 minutes, and then hightails it back to Washington. What does that do? I mean, that's not creating the comity that a state and the federal government needs. So, yeah, this is a very aggressive act on the part of the Trump administration. And it's not right. It won't stand. And as I say, I'm sure this lawsuit has more longevity than the Trump administration itself.
Attorney General, Sessions today made the argument that these ICE sweeps have rounded up criminals that are dangerous to the public. Do you have any kind of statistics on what percentage of these folks had no criminal record? And if so, what does the state intend? Can the state provide any protection for them, or what's the outcome there?
Well, the main point is that these laws do not protect criminals, and they explicitly allow for the handover of these criminals. They're listed, all the very serious crimes. But secondly, you make the point that there's a lot of innocent people out there. And this is the problem. We have millions of people who are here without papers. And some of them have been working for 10, 15, 20 years. They've been serving the economy. A lot of them are doing the dirty work, whether it's washing dishes or picking fruit in the field. And now the Attorney General is basically initiating a reign of terror. What we can do is do what we're doing through these laws. But again, we're going to do it with respect to the supremacy clause of the federal government.
Governor, the Attorney General said that people who are supporting these bills believe in open borders. Do you believe in open borders?
No, I don't at all. Again, that's one of the lies. There are 3 lies. Open border, lie 1. Protect criminals, lie 2. California wants to secede, lie 3. Not true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, NPR News near the Turkey-Syria border.
From Washington, this is NPR News. 1 week left until a highly contested House special election is held in southwestern Pennsylvania. The race is attracting national political star power. Former Vice President Joe Biden visited the area yesterday to stump for the Democratic candidate Conor Lamb. From member station WESA, Annalie Herring tells us what makes this race one to watch.
It's in a district that voted heavily for President Trump and which hasn't elected a Democrat to the House in 15 years. But with a coalition of energized Democrats and organized labor, Lamb has made this a close contest against his Republican opponent, Rick Saccone. National GOP groups have spent more than $9 million to hold on to the seat. Biden says that just